Welcome, Arizona Cardinals fans, to the Revenge of the Birds wrap-up show. I'm your host, Seth Cox. With me tonight, my co-host and lead writer for the Revenge of the Birds blog, Tyler Nickel. How's it going, Tyler? We're back after a week off, and we get to talk about a victory.
Yeah, victory, but I don't know how optimistic Cardinals fans are after that victory. That's one question we've got.
Yeah, and it's an interesting. We can start here and then kind of go into the game. It's an interesting conundrum, and Vince Marotta. Um, I put on Twitter yesterday, not to be too dramatic, but I thought that when they got the ball back, at the end of the game, and I said this is, kind of a season-defining drive, and Vince responded, that is a tad dramatic because they're not a good team, or they're just an average team, and he's correct. They are. They're playing like a very average, maybe even slightly below average team. Um, but so is the rest of the NFC. I mean, outside of Dallas and Seattle, I don't know if any team's actually good.
No, I don't even know if those teams are good. You look at the competition that the Cowboys have gone up against. The Steelers are just kind of a meh team that they beat. And then the Seahawks have had some pretty bad losses on their record, and they came in and tied with this below average Cardinals team. So I don't know who is good in the NFC. The Falcons were supposed to be good. They're just not that great. The Vikings were supposed to be good. They're not that great. Panthers are bad. Green Bay is bad. I don't know. Who is good? I think the Seahawks could pick up steam, but the Cardinals, what I'm getting at is that the Cardinals still are in this just for the lack of a dominant powerhouse team in the NFC.
And that was kind of my point. Is after the morning, you know, we saw that this NFC is wide open. So while the Cardinals are a clearly flawed team, they're still a playoff caliber team, and in the NFC, that could possibly mean a Super Bowl contending team. I don't know if they can beat a Patriots squad. I don't know if they can beat um, even like a Denver Broncos squad. But I mean, that is the next step, right? Would be to get to the Super Bowl. So um, they're still where they want to be in terms of in contention. Now let's get to the reality. This team is just not very good,
Right.
and that's what's come of what is happening this year. A lot of it is the NFL. The NFL's as a whole, the product itself is not overly great. The teams are not great. The offenses are not great. The defenses are not great. I mean, it just seems like it's a down year in the NFL, and it's too bad that the Cardinals picked this year to be down as well. I think we saw I think we saw the flaw of the Cardinals, and that is that if you if you ask them to win by the pass, it's going to look great statistically, but they're going to keep you in a game, and maybe even like a Chicago Bears or a Los Angeles Rams. We've seen that already once. A team that's actually better than the San Francisco 49ers probably wins that game.
Yeah, I think so too. 49ers really didn't have anything to offer. They sold out in stopping David Johnson because they didn't want to get run over for 200 plus yards again. So I don't know what the Cardinals. Their plan was to air it out, obviously, once they saw David Johnson couldn't get more than a yard or two every carry, but they weren't successful at that. And I think a lot of it boils down to just not having healthy guys. And JJ Nelson was pretty atrocious yesterday, but Michael Floyd showed up. Larry Fitzgerald was amazing. So I don't know what it was necessarily. Palmer was sharp at times. He looked down at others. He wasn't terrible, but something just wasn't clicking, and it shouldn't have been a game where they had to kick a field goal at the end to win it.
No, it shouldn't. And there were some positives. The signs of life. They floundered in the red zone at times, but they showed signs of life. And the defense had dominant stretches again. They dominated in the run game. Colin Kaepernick, I think, averaged about 5 yards per carry, 6 yards per carry. But that, 11 on 11 football is a lot different than the average 10 on 11 that the Cardinals play. So, all of a sudden when you have to account for him, it does, you're going to give up some runs. I thought the worst part defensively was the fact that they were a little bit picked apart by Colin Kaepernick, who
Yeah.
has not been a good quarterback this year.
Yeah, I thought Vance McDonald, I know on a couple of different opportunities, was just wide open in the middle of the field for whatever reason. Um, and Kaepernick was just slinging the ball on crossing routes all game, and they made no attempt at making an adjustment. And then on the touchdown where Kaepernick ran it in, he lined up in the shotgun in pistol. You knew he was going to take the ball and run it in himself. I mean, that was so obvious to everybody in the stadium. Yet the Cardinals rushed all their guys up the middle as if he wasn't able to take it outside and run it in himself. It's like they didn't account for him being able to do that at all. It was just a lack of adjustments that was very frustrating at times.
The Cardinals were held to 3 points in the second half. Um, I think that outside, I think that was the most discouraging part because they moved the ball really up and down the field on the 49ers in the second half. You had the Palmer fumble. You had the terrible interception he threw. Um, but you had other issues as well. As you said, they couldn't run the ball at all. They became a passing offense. And again, the 362 yards is going to look nice on the paper, but the reality is it was just not an overall great game. But again, to go back to what we started with, they won. And in reality, they kind of control their own destiny with the playoffs because they get Minnesota and Washington. So if they beat those teams, they can get into that wild card position. Um, you don't want to say it's over for the division, but I don't know where 3 losses come from, or 2 losses come from to get the Cardinals and Seahawks even. I don't know.
Yeah, and I think another team that you can add in for the wild card contention is maybe the Falcons. What if the Saints overtake them for that NFC South? I don't see that as an impossibility. I don't know if it's likely, but it's definitely something that can happen. But yeah, like you said, the Vikings, the Redskins, all these players or all these teams are still in, the Cardinals' sight, so they can still make a run at the wild card for sure.
And you mentioned the Saints. The Saints are just behind the Cardinals, and even the Los Angeles Rams somehow,
Yeah,
some way, are still one game behind the Arizona Cardinals in the playoff race. So, it would be very Cardinals-like to let it come down to Week 17 and have to play the Rams in LA and win a game to keep their playoff hopes alive, at least this season. But other than that, I thought you hit on it. Carson Palmer did a really, admirable job. I thought Michael Floyd played his best game of the season.
easily.
Larry Fitzgerald continues to defy every adjective you can throw at him. Defensively, Chandler Jones 2 more sacks. Calais Campbell with the sack. They brought more pressure. They were able to get to Kaepernick at times. It was too little on offense and too much bending on defense, and against a good team, you're probably looking at a loss and maybe kind of an end to the season type thing. But now you get to go on the road against the team that is literally one spot ahead of you in the playoff race, and start that march towards hopefully 11-4-1, but even at 10-5-1 or 9-6-1, I think 6 losses is where you're going to have to be at to be in the playoffs this year, in the NFC, which isn't saying much.
Right.
Anything else?
I mean, it was good to see signs of life from Michael Floyd. I know we kind of touched on that a little bit. I don't know if it's, I mean, this is kind of what his MO is, though. He'll show up for a few games at the end of the season, and then he'll go into the offseason expecting to get paid. I'm not sure that's going to happen. But I wrote on Revenge of the Birds the other day that he's kind of put himself back in the Cardinals' sights if they really want to keep him, just because his play has been so bad. We came into the season thinking he's going to outplay anything the Cardinals are going to be able to afford, so there's no way he's coming back. But now, I mean, he's been awful all season except for yesterday, and who knows? Maybe they'll make him an offer and see if he can stay in town and see if he can finally reach that potential that everybody's been clamoring for.
All right, guys, thanks for listening. We'll be back next week to hopefully wrap up another win against the Minnesota Vikings and a continued raising of the standings in the playoffs. So have a good night, everybody.